across the vast timeline of human evolution, there's a name that few remember, not because they were insignificant, but because they were too silent. They left no cave paintings. They carved no symbols into stone. They built no temples, wrote no poems, and had no language as we know it today. And yet, they survived. Not just survived, they crossed 3 continents, sailed across seas, tamed fire, crafted tools, and endured some of the most extreme climate shifts Earth has ever seen. A species that seemed primitive and rudimentary paved the way for everything we now call modern humanity. Their name was Homo erectus, the first upright humans, and they existed for nearly 2 million years, longer than any other human species. Not Homo sapiens, not Neanderthals. It was them, the forgotten shadows of history, who endured the longest. But how did a species without speech, without complex culture, manage to live so long and go so far? What made them different? What kept them from being erased? And more importantly, did they ever really disappear? Or are they still alive inside us? In every step we take, every heartbeat, every drop of blood. Let's travel back in time to an age before writing, before wheels, before gods on mountaintops, to a world where Homo erectus quietly wrote the first chapter in our story of becoming human. This isn't just their story. This is the foundation of us. Part 2, Birth in a Changing Africa. Imagine standing in the heart of Africa 2 million years ago, but not the Africa you know today. No endless golden plains, no symphony of birdsong. Instead, a continent in violent transformation. The dense forests that once covered vast swaths of land were shrinking, retreating toward the interior. In their place stretched dry, cracked savannas, torn by unpredictable rivers, raging in the rainy season, vanishing into dust during droughts. The climate had grown moody and brutal. Rains came without warning, droughts dragged on, water disappeared in a blink. This was no place for the slow to adapt. Australopithecus, the once dominant ape of African forests, had vanished from the fossil record nearly 1 million years earlier. Homo habilis, the handyman known for crafting the first tools, still clung to the forest edge, where the silent shadow of extinction was already falling. But clever hands and crude stones were no longer enough. The world was changing faster than they could react. And then, in the midst of this ecological chaos, something new emerged. Taller, stronger, smarter. At Drimmelen in South Africa, a shattered skull labeled DNH-143 revealed features never seen before. Thick bone, sloping forehead, robust build, and most importantly, a brain significantly larger than any ancestor before. To the east in Kubifora, Kenya, and Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, bones, teeth, and sophisticated stone tools began appearing almost simultaneously, as if a biological revolution was sweeping the continent. No one knows exactly where Homo erectus was born, but one thing is clear. They were no ordinary successor. They were evolution's fierce answer to a continent in upheaval. And while other species vanished, Homo erectus stood up and began to walk, not just to survive, but to conquer the world. Part 3, the body built to run. If there's one thing that truly set Homo erectus apart from every human species that came before, it's this. They were born to run, not to sprint, not to dash and stop, but to endure, to run through the day, through the heat, across endless African grasslands, under the unforgiving sun. They were taller than their predecessors. Some individuals stood nearly 6 feet tall, with lean but tightly muscled frames, like a drawn bow, ready to release. Their long, straight legs allowed for greater strides. Their shoulders rotated freely, no longer bound by the need to climb trees, but now ideal for throwing, a new advantage in hunting. But the real secret? Look down at their feet. In Ileret, Kenya, archaeologists uncovered fossilized footprints dating back 1.5 million years. Not curled like an ape's, not with a separated big toe like a climber's. These prints were arched, straight, short-toed, and forward-facing, the perfect blueprint for long-distance travel. The Homo erectus body was a living thermodynamic machine. They had a dense network of sweat glands, much like us today, to cool themselves during exertion. Their slender frame helped dissipate heat, and they had an Achilles tendon, acting like a spring, storing and releasing energy with every step. With this physiology, they developed a hunting strategy the world had never seen: persistence hunting. They didn't need to be faster than an antelope. They just needed to last longer, chasing their prey under the burning sun, step by relentless step, until the animal collapsed from heat exhaustion. In a world where speed could win a chase, endurance was what won the right to survive. And Homo erectus, shaped like the world's first marathoner, was the first human to play evolution's long game. They didn't run to escape. They ran to conquer. Part 4, Tools and Fire, the Survival Revolution. Before Homo erectus, our ancestors made tools, yes, but they were crude flakes, smashed in haste, used a few times, then discarded, like sparks in the night, brief, brilliant, and gone. Homo erectus lit the fire of thought. They didn't just strike rocks together. They imagined the shape hidden within a rough stone. They carved it with deliberate, symmetrical strikes, again and again, across generations. This was the birth of the Acheulean culture, and its crown jewel, the hand axe. Unlike the basic Oldowan flakes, simply chipped off and used, the Acheulean axe was bifacial, sharp, durable, and versatile. It could skin animals, cut tendons, crack bones, dig for tubers, chop branches, even be thrown for defense. It wasn't just a tool, it was a portable survival kit. But to make one, Homo erectus had to do something no human had done before: plan, remember steps, visualize before action. This wasn't just stone smashing, it was structured thinking, an early glimpse of intelligence. And then they went even further. They kept fire. In Wonderwork Cave, South Africa, archaeologists found layers of ash, burnt bone, and soot dating back 1 million years, not from wildfires, but from controlled flames within the cave. Maybe they couldn't yet spark a fire from scratch, but they knew how to capture it from lightning, carry it from scorched fields, and nurture it through the night. And that changed everything. Fire cooked their food, softening tough meat, unlocking more calories for growing brains. It warded off predators, warmed the cold, and extended the day, creating space for something new. Around the fire, humans could share, learn, remember. With just a stone and a flame, Homo erectus didn't just survive. They began laying the foundations of the first human culture. No writing, no language, just fire, and a hand gripping a stone axe. Part 5, The Great Migration, the first to leave Africa. If you ever believed that only Homo sapiens, us, were the wanderers who set out to conquer the world, think again. Homo erectus left Africa more than 1.5 million years before we did. No maps, no compass, no sailboats, just bare feet, endurance, and a level of courage that bordered on the absurd. Their journey began around 1.8 million years ago. They weren't exiled. They weren't refugees. They walked out of Africa driven by instinct, or perhaps something greater than instinct, curiosity. In Dmanisi, in what is now Georgia, archaeologists uncovered skulls, jawbones, and stone tools from the earliest known erectus to step beyond Africa. They were small-bodied, sharp-eyed, gripping hand axes, standing in an unfamiliar land like prehistoric explorers. And they didn't stop there. They continued north, then east. In China, sites like Gongwangling and Lantian show that erectus had settled there by 1.6 million years ago, enduring the cold and rugged terrain. Then came Southeast Asia, through Sangiran in Indonesia, and finally Java, an island completely surrounded by deep ocean. And that's where the story becomes almost unbelievable. Even during the ice ages, when sea levels dropped dramatically, Java was never connected to the mainland. No land bridge, no natural path. So how did they get there? There's only one possibility. They crossed the sea. Whether by drifting on bamboo rafts, lashing together makeshift boats, We're simply letting currents carry them. The method isn't what matters. What matters is that they dared to leave the shore, sailing into the unknown, without any certainty that land even existed on the other side. No one told them to go. There was no divine mission. But every footprint they left on new soil, every ember left in a cave, is a reminder. We are a species born to move. Homo erectus were the first true explorers of humanity. They didn't just leave Africa. They redefined the meaning of home, stretching it across the globe. And they did it millions of years before we ever wrote our first word. Part 6, a wordless genetic legacy. We haven't recovered their DNA. Not a single strand of genetic code has survived the ravages of time, scorched by sunlight and buried deep in hardened soil. But that doesn't mean they left nothing behind. Because Homo erectus didn't need to write a will. They etched their legacy into the bodies of their descendants, including us. When you run long distances without collapsing in the heat, it's thanks to the sweat cooling system that Erectus perfected over hundreds of thousands of generations. When your feet have arched soles, your toes point forward, it's because of millions of persistent steps across open savannas. When your brain can plan ahead, imagine futures, and weigh decisions, it's because the first sparks of that neural architecture began in those who could wield fire and shape stone. No DNA remains, but their imprint is still in you. Genes that govern efficient body structure for endurance, like RUNX2, which helps shape long legs, or EDAR, which regulates sweat glands, show signs of being naturally selected during the reign of Erectus. Even the frontal lobes, the part of the brain responsible for planning, judgment, and social cohesion, began expanding inside their long, low skulls. And from Homo erectus, other evolutionary branches were born. Homo heidelbergensis, ancestors of the Neanderthals in Europe, the Denisovans, mysterious descendants in Asia, and finally, Homo sapiens, us. All of them inherited something from Erectus, a resilient body, adaptive thinking, and a restless spirit of movement. Not a single strand of DNA has survived, but their legacy flows through our blood, our breath, and the rhythm of our hearts. They weren't just our ancestors. They were the biological foundation of who we are. Part 7. The survival secrets of 2 million years. In the harsh prehistoric world, where a drought could wipe out an entire clan and an ice age could erase all traces of life, Homo erectus survived for 2 million years, not because they were the strongest, not because they were the smartest, but because they were the most adaptable. They followed 3 golden strategies, not flashy, but powerful enough to withstand every crisis nature could throw at them. 1. Omnivores, survival by eating everything. While many species relied on specific foods, like tender roots or fresh meat, Homo erectus ate anything that could be eaten. Dental analysis reveals they consumed meat, bone marrow, roots, tubers, seeds, even insects and wild plants others would avoid. When prey was scarce, they dug for roots. In dry seasons, they cracked bones for fat. No need for luxury, just enough energy to survive and keep moving. 2. Movement, walking to stay alive. They didn't build villages. They didn't settle. Homo erectus was always on the move, following rivers, animal herds, regrowing forests after fires. With bodies built for long journeys, they went farther than any human species before. Across deserts, over hills, through jungles, even across oceans. When the environment changed, they didn't resist, they moved. 3. Simple but reliable tools. While later humans constantly innovated new tools, Homo erectus stayed loyal to the Acheulean hand axe for over 1 million years. Because they understood, you don't need many. You just need one tool good enough to do everything. That hand axe could chop wood, dig, butcher meat, and defend, a compact, durable, trustworthy, all-purpose tool. While other Homo species failed due to overspecialization or reliance on unstable environments and fragile technologies, Homo erectus survived through consistency, adaptability, and radical simplicity. They didn't chase constant innovation. They didn't fight nature. They lived with it and moved with it all the way to the edge of time. Part 8. The Long Quiet Decline. There was no asteroid, no supervolcano, no apocalyptic extinction event from myth and legend. The end of Homo erectus came like the last cold wind of a dying season, quiet, gradual, and without a cry. Around 800,000 years ago, Earth entered a period of increasing instability. Glacial cycles, once slow and steady, became shorter, more violent, and less predictable. The climate grew erratic. Rain came and went. Deserts expanded. Rivers dried up. The once connected world of Homo erectus began to fracture and collapse. No longer a wide-open landscape for migration, but isolated pockets of land, where small groups of erectus became trapped, unable to reunite or support one another. And then came the new humans. From Africa, Homo heidelbergensis, taller, with bigger brains and better tools. In Europe, Neanderthals, efficient hunters, adapted to the cold. And eventually, Homo sapiens, us, bringing ingenuity, language, social networks, and cultural complexity. Faced with new rivals, faster, more cooperative, more innovative, erectus was pushed back into remote and marginal lands. They didn't disappear in a dramatic blaze. They simply faded, like a fire running out of wood, as the world ignited with transformation. And in the end, only one place remained, a remote island in Southeast Asia, Java, where the last few clung to survival, trying to hold on to the final breath of a species that once led the human journey, a species that opened the road for humanity, but could no longer walk it. Part 9. The Last on Java Island. On a remote island in southern Indonesia, surrounded by ocean and buried beneath the red soil of the Ingong Valley, archaeologists uncovered a series of strange fossilized skulls. Not Homo sapiens, not Neanderthals, but Homo erectus. What shocked scientists wasn't just the shape of these skulls, but their age, about 108,000 years ago. That's when Neanderthals were hunting reindeer in Europe, when Homo sapiens were beginning their exodus from Africa. Yet in one forgotten corner of the planet, a small band of erectus still existed, quiet and resilient, just like their story had always been. Java, with its dense jungles, rivers, and volcanoes, had become a sealed chamber, a time capsule, once sea levels rose. And inside, the last remnants of a once mighty species held on as the world changed around them. No competition, no new tools, no one left to learn from. Only the biological memory of Homo erectus burning faintly like old embers in a dying fire. They weren't wiped out by disaster. They weren't hunted down. They simply faded. No tragedy, no monuments, no written chronicles, just a silent turn in the map of evolution. But stop for a moment. Imagine a night on Java, 100,000 years ago. In a small cave, a flickering fire still glows. A group of people quietly shares a final meal of roasted meat. They don't know they're the last. They don't know they are the final chapter of an age. And then the fire goes out. No one carries the name Erectus anymore, but they never truly disappeared, because part of them still walks within us. Part 10, a legacy that still moves. They didn't paint the walls of caves. They told no myths. They built no towering monuments to awe future generations. But Homo erectus left something far greater, a blueprint for evolution, a biological, behavioral, and cognitive template that millions of years later, we are still living by. When you go for a run in the morning and your body finds rhythm, sweats, and adapts to the heat. When you build a fire, use a tool, or work with others to solve a problem. When you get back up after failure, refuse to quit, you are repeating instincts burned into your blood by a species that walked the earth 2 million years ago. They, Homo erectus, were the first to plan to use tools not just to survive, but to expand human potential. They were the first to coordinate a hunt, guard a fire, and live in groups with loose but effective roles. Without speaking, they left echoes in our bones, in our genes, in every step we take. We, Homo sapiens, may be the modern humans, but without the rectus, there would be no us. Without them, we wouldn't have the endurance to run, the brains to plan, or the adaptability to cross oceans and survive climates. They didn't disappear. They dissolved into the human stream. Because evolution isn't a chain of dynasties. It's a long, unbroken bloodline, deep, ancient, and still flowing. Homo erectus is the first chapter of a story we are still writing. And every time we push past limits, every time we leave our comfort zone to explore or to build something new, we're not walking alone. We're walking with our ancestors, the first to ever step into the unknown. You're living the very journey Homo erectus began 2 million years ago, not in the forests, not on the plains, but in the survival race of the 21st century, where we must still adapt, learn, collaborate, and push forward. When you run, create, take risks, and venture beyond the familiar, you are continuing their evolutionary story. And if you're searching for meaning, origins, or truth about being human, this is where your search begins. Subscribe now to explore the untold stories of our ancestors, the hidden history written in every cell of your body, and the incredible legacy of you, a modern human carrying 2 million years of memory. Evolution never stopped. It's happening right now, inside you. Follow the journey, and let's walk this path together.